legislative initiative underscores the importance the House attaches to its legislative agenda. In view of the foregoing, the committee requested for up-to-date reports on the implementation of the 2020 deliberations on the final breakdown of budgetary line items after the passage of the 2021 Appropriation Act. The committee is aware of the challenges of the judiciary as excavated by the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with the security challenges occasioned by the restiveness that undoubtedly slowed down development in every aspect of our national lives. The recent security threats to judges, denigration of the sanctity of courts, and vandalization of court infrastructure are a few examples. These destructive acts are highly condemnable and call for concerted action. The House believes that the judiciary is mindful of the challenges being globally experienced, while attempts are being made by courts and judicial bodies through budgetary allocations to ensure that adequate provisions are made in priority areas like the welfare and security of judicial officers. I say that for emphasis again, like the welfare and security of judicial officers, staff of the judiciary, and litigant, electrofitting and automation of courtrooms in line with the global best practices, as well as provision of modern infrastructures in courts, which is sacrosanct for effective and efficient justice delivery and administration. The destruction of courts by hoodlums that hijacked the NSAS protest has once again brought to fore the exigency of automating our court system right from the filing process to judgment delivery. The incident has led to loss of some vital court documents in some courts, which will stall several lawsuits and trials. There is urgent need to implement electronic filing of court processes, electronic recording and transcription of court proceedings, and electronic collection of judgment, and having a central server that backs up court processes and document, and synchronize data across remote locations. These will expedite justice delivery and forestall loss of court document. It is worrisome to note that the 2021 budget estimates for the judiciary in the sum of 110 billion naira only, which represents statutory transfer to the judiciary, is inadequate in view of current realities. The committee will engage the leadership of the House and indeed the National Assembly for more funds for the judiciary to address the observed and obvious challenges of the judiciary for expedited and efficient dispensation of justice in the country. There is need for the adequate funding of the judiciary in order for it to independently carry out its constitutional mandate of check and balances, settlement of dispute, and protection of fundamental rights of citizens. The committee under my leadership will continue to assiduously work at ensuring the independence of judiciary, quick and efficient dispensation of justice for Nigerians, while ensuring better welfare, security, and working conditions for judicial officers and staff of the judiciary. The Ninth Assembly and the House of Representatives, under the able leadership of Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, is fully committed to every legislative initiative that will guarantee effective and efficient justice delivery and respect for the rule of law in the country. The position of the House on the reforms of the judiciary is well articulated in the House legislative agenda. I sincerely thank the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, and the leadership of the House for the confidence reposed in me as the Chairman and my Deputy, Abu Dederi Haruna Issa, in steering the House Committee on Judiciary. I, on behalf of the committee, will continue to pledge our unalloyed loyalty to the country and absolute support to the Speaker and the House leadership. My appreciation also goes to my honorable colleagues for the immeasurable support I have enjoyed from them in the last 1 year since we inaugurated as a committee. The committee wishes to commend the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the appointment of the 8 justices of the Supreme Court, thereby raising the number of justices to 20, which will help in fast-tracking administration and delivery of justice. And we all are aware of the workload and the burden and the pressure on the head of the justices of the Supreme Court before this appointment, because we only had about 12 or 13 or thereabout to sit on a numerous and enormous task that was meant for the full complement of the court, which ought to have been 21 persons. So it is against this background that we quite appreciate this appointment and their subsequent swearing in. The background and the world of experience of the appointed justices is also commended. I say this from the point of knowledge, as the Senate had extended the goodwill to me as the chairman of the committee to join in the screening of those justices of the Court of Appeal that were elevated and later were elevated to the Supreme Court. And looking through the CV and the resume of those justices, we come to this conclusion that they are men and women, or in the legal profession, they are men of proven and tested integrity. And we also would appeal to the President to see the need to immediately fill the vacant positions in the Court of Appeal. And I believe that this budget defense and would afford us opportunity to make adequate provisions for those appointments. Once again, on behalf of the committee, you are welcome to this budget defense exercise. I thank you. Therefore, at this juncture, call on the Secretary of the National Judicial Council to give the general overview of the 2021 statutory transfer to the Judiciary.
Let me, on behalf of my colleagues, the various accounting officers, begin by expressing our gratitude to this committee for the privilege of appearing before you to make our presentations. We are indeed most honored. Permit me to also, on behalf of the Honorable the Chief Justice of Nigeria and Chairman National Judicial Council, Honorable Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad, CFR, convey the kind appreciation and gratitude of the Federal Judiciary, and indeed the appreciation of the entire heads of federal courts to this very important committee for the wonderful, remarkable working relationship we have over the years enjoyed. We indeed thank you for your continuous collaboration, support, and understanding. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, the Nigerian Judiciary was in this current fiscal year 2020 appropriated the sum of 110 billion naira. I'm glad to report to this committee that we have so far been able to assess over 75% release of these appropriated funds. I'm equally pleased to report to this committee that we have so far been able to achieve over 75% implementation. Mr. Chairman and honorable members, the ceiling given to the Nigerian Judiciary for the 2021 fiscal year remains unchanged at the sum of 110 billion naira. Permit me to also use this opportunity to thank His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for the sustained funding of the judiciary. The Chief Justice and Chairman of the National Judicial Council and the entire head of federal courts wish to register their profound appreciation to Mr. President and indeed to the National Assembly for the 2020 appropriation. Now, Mr. Chairman, whilst we appreciate the sustained funding of the judiciary by the government, permit me to also, with all sense of gratitude, appreciation, and responsibility, I re-echo the position of the chairman on the need for increased funding of the Nigerian judiciary. Mr. Chairman, we are all living witness to the realities of the current situation in the country. We are all aware of the exchange in fluctuation on exchange rate and the resulting effect on budget implementation. So, Mr. Chairman, in view of this, I want to reiterate the same position that the Nigerian judiciary is indeed in their need of increased funding. Permit me, Mr. Chairman, to adduce a little of the challenges facing the Nigerian judiciary, for instance. Mr. Chairman and honorable members will agree with me that, at the instance of the executive, and coupled with public outcry for a fast, simple, and efficient judicial system, the Supreme Court of Nigeria was made to increase the complement of that court to 20, including the Chief Justice. Now, we were promised a special intervention. Mr. Chairman, that intervention is yet to come. Mr. Chairman, as a response to this yearning, the Court of Appeal also had to establish 4 additional divisions. Not only that, Mr. Chairman, the Court of Appeal is also in the process of appointing additional 20 justices of that court. The Federal High Court in the same vein, Mr. Chairman, and the National Industrial Court are also in the process of appointing 20 additional judges of that court. So also is the Federal High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. So also, Mr. Chairman, the various state courts are also in the process of making hundreds of appointments. Now, Mr. Chairman and honorable members will most responsibly agree with me that this exercise will certainly come with additional, cost on our personnel, overhead, and of course, capital expenditure. So, Mr. Chairman, without increase in funding, I don't think Nigerian judiciary will be able to contend with this. Mr. Chairman, apart from this, the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic has also now, more than before, compelled the Nigerian judiciary to continue to leverage on ICT and technology. This, Mr. Chairman, will definitely come with additional cost if we are to effectively function. Mr. Chairman, the unfortunate incidents occasioned by the recent NSAS protest resulted in destruction of different courtrooms across the country. Apart from the vandalization, looting of facilities of the courts. So, Mr. Chairman, for us to be able to put this court back to work, we will require a lot of funding. Mr. Chairman and honorable members, Nigeria is now over 2 decades of democracy. And it will be safe to say that democracy and democratic governance is firmly rooted now in our country. So for this reason, Mr. Chairman, I want to most respectfully appeal for a paradigm shift in our budgeting regime. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, a situation whereby a certain department of government will unilaterally sit and decide what goes to other arms of government and often oblivious of the needs and wants of that arm of government. I submit, Mr. Chairman, that cannot be said to be, in line with standard best practice as obtained in other advanced democracies. So, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, permit me to appeal to you that in the exercise of your legislative functions and patriotic duties, please do consider increasing the funding of the Nigerian judiciary. That would be a great service to this country. Having made my point, Mr. Chairman, permit me to give a general overview of the 2021 proposals of the Nigerian Judiciary. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, our initial proposal, I'll bring up the copy. You can give it. This general remark. So our initial proposal, Mr. Chairman, for the entire judiciary is 187,945,531,476 naira 26 kobos. But, Mr. Chairman, honorable members, constrained by the ceiling given to us, the 110 billion ceiling given to us, we had to make a lot of adjustment in order to be in line with the ceiling given to us. So what I'm going to read out as our general overview now is going to be based on the 110 billion naira ceiling given to us. Now, consolidated for federal courts, we are proposing the sum of 3,804,500,589 naira. Total personnel proposal for 2021 is 29,908,808,195 naira. Salaries and allowances of state judicial officers. We are proposing the sum of 13,893,404,877 naira 24 kobos. Pension and gratuity of retired federal judicial officers. We are proposing the sum of 5,274,688 naira 99 kobo. Our total capital proposal, we are proposing the sum of 29,410,269,828 naira. Total overhead for the entire judiciary. We are proposing the sum of 21,201,460,313 naira.
The tremendous and untiring support and cooperation the committee has been extending to the Supreme Court. The court has been enjoying great interpersonal relationship from this honorable committee over time. Last year, the National Assembly graciously appropriated the sum of 10,201,000,000 to this court for the 2020 financial year. The proposed budget for 2021 is put at 9,401,000,000. This is 800,521,145 naira 80 kobo, or about 8% less than the 10.201 billion appropriated for 2020. This decrease will adversely affect the cost activities due to the recent appointments of 8, it's a mistake here, it's supposed to be 8 additional honorable justices to the full complement of cost bench capacity as provided by the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has amended. This appointment were made graciously, which were graciously approved by the distinguished National Assembly, expected to impact our capital expenditure. The court is proposing the sum of 2,692,652,364 naira 42 kobo for overhead expenditure, which is 2,025,504,923 naira 86 kobo, less than that of 2020. The decrease in overhead represents 43%. On the other hand, is as a result of the envelope constraint. The court is proposing the sum of 4,403,011,200 naira for the capital expenditure in the year 2021, which is 1,284,011,200 naira, are about 41% higher than that of 2020. This is as a result of expected increase in activities. Now, all the other information has contained in the paper we presented, document we presented to the honorable members for your consideration. We are much obliged.
Before I yield the floor to my colleagues, I don't know the logic. I don't know the logic behind the decrease in the allocation to Supreme Court for 2021 as against what was obtainable in 2020 when we did not have the number of justices that we have had today. If we had budgeted for 10 billion, when the court were about less number of justices in 2020 appropriation, and just to the end of 2020, the president has approved the appointment of not one, not two, not three, 8 justices of the Supreme Court. I think wisdom and logic, common sense, should prevail on the need to even make an increase, assuming that an increase, assuming an increase over the appropriation for 2020 could not be achieved, then why not remain at the benchmark? So I don't know what you can answer to that. NJC.
Yes.
I don't know what what answer you can give to that.
By the ceiling, 110 billion has been given to us. Now, there are a lot of proposals for, appointment of additional about 20 Court of Appeal, a lot of appointment of judges in order to address the yearning of the public for, past judicial system. So those votes have to be taken care of first, the salaries and personnel. So after deduction on all the personnel, what was left was what was shared among all the courts and judicial bodies, and each court and judicial body has a decrease now. Because we have to make provision for the salaries and allowances of the appointments to be made. Otherwise, there won't be appointment.
In spite of the increase in the number of justices who are getting across the courts, the Supreme Court, and then we're looking forward to the ones coming from the Court of Appeal and the judges of the other courts. They're having less. Now, Mr. Chair, my problem, as I've always said, is that so long as we operate the envelope system, we're not going to go very far with our budgeting. But that is the point I've continuously made. But the question I want to ask the Secretary of the NJC is this. Did you make a representation at all to the authorities concerning this fact that you're going to have increase or indeed increases in the appointment of justices across the board? Did you make any representation? Because it is absurd, totally absurd, that you are having an increase of 8 justices to the Supreme Court. 8, not 1, not 2, not 3, 8. And then you are having probably not just the budget you had last year, you're having a reduction. So my question is, did you have opportunity to make any representation to, you had already made the complaint that some other body is one determining what you get. Did you have opportunity to make a representation to them? Albeit that the National Assembly would deal with the issues of your budget, and I hope we're able to deal with it. But did you make a representation to that body?
Opportunity to make such was not given to us in the first place. The only thing we saw was the envelope sealing given to us. So no room for making presentation.
The court ought not and should not be a revenue generating agency, but otherwise it's going to work hardship on litigant. Because if we begin to look at the courts and the judicial bodies as revenue generating agencies, then the cost of that is going to be transferred on the litigant. And that again will not create the needed confidence of the citizenry in our judicial system. So I think the judiciary should be exempted from that blanket provision that for generating revenue for the government. So, it's basically there to discharge, I would call, social services, because if disputes are settled among litigants, then we are going to have peace, and then we are going to have social cohesion. Honorable Olarenwaju,
it is worrisome that this envelope system is equally given to the judiciary. I'm opportune to belong to some other committees apart from this committee, and I realize that the same thing is applicable everywhere. Almost all the ministries and agencies complain of, fund not enough for them. And one of my thinking is that we should begin to reprioritize, rejig out the way we do things. For example, I look at item number 4 in your 2020 performance, and I saw a budget line of 440 million naira for international travel. Of course, out of that, the sum of 299 million naira was released. And out of that, 130 million naira has been spent. And I keep asking myself, when did we have this? We only have travel, space January to March. And thereafter, all of us knew, almost all countries will not admit foreigners. It is my belief that Nigeria, among other countries, presently have one of the best hand in legal practices. If we begin to rejig, begin to rethink and replan our power, reprioritize our things, some of these expenses can be diverted to some other things. Go to courts. Courts are leaking, no chairs. If you spend 130 million on refurbishing chairs, tables, it gives us a better image. That international travel we want to go to, they will come and take it here. One of the best hand in managing courts are sitting down here in Africa. Why do we still do some of this international travel like so important? 200 and something released, 130 spent within how many months? How many months do we have to work this year?
Okay, Honorable Olarenwaju, I think that should have been in the column of 2019. What you've seen should have been in the column of 2019. I drew the attention of the NJC to it, that it was in the column of 2019, and they said they are going to correct it and bring. And for 2020, everybody understands the fact that there is no permission, there is no avenue for international travels. And part of the things that we are going to be looking at as a committee is how do we support them, maybe one way or the other through environment, to try to get fundings from these heads to support them. Because right now, I don't think that, like the Supreme Court, I don't think that they have made provision for the residence and the vehicular logistics for the new justices that have been appointed. So I believe that we are going to be looking at that angle. That's my thinking, that we can begin to see how we can via fundings from these heads of international travels and create the emphasis of this committee is on the welfare of judicial officers. Anything that would make them work better, get healthy, and then steer them away from any act of anybody who is trying to rob any negative thing on their reputation by way of corruption. We want to create an enabling environment for judicial officers. So that is a mistake they made in the computation. Yes. So I've asked them to correct that and give us a corrected version of that. So I don't think, and from what they said, I don't think that they've expended anyone on international travels. Princess Miriam.
The funding for the judiciary, as we have seen, is grossly inadequate. I use this opportunity to also assure you that the committee will work with the leadership and ensure that we get better funding. But I have a suggestion or a question. I've seen the presentation you've done, NJC and Supreme Court. In keeping with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has ravaged the world, you are aware that there's another upward curve right now, and nations are beginning to shut down again. I haven't seen this budget. Do you have any plan to take care of judges, the welfare of judges, like our chairman said, in the coming year, or to curb, maybe to provide for virtual courts or and the related items? So I don't know if you had that captured or you're working in line with that, because most of our judges are within the age that is predisposed to the pandemic. Thank you.
Make sure that a reasonable amount of money is being allocated, because this money is too grossly inadequate to the judiciary. And as a matter of fact, it's a third tier of government, apart from the executives and the legislature. So their importance is very significant. And I want to advise also they should use the opportunity to generate revenue, because internally generated revenue, because there is a lot of cases that are supposed to be charged, so that the government can also generate revenue. I think, Mr. Chairman, apart from taking care of them, they have to make use of the opportunity.
In this document, there is nowhere where you stated the income generated from tenders. And I want to believe, based on the budget you have of 2020, you must have had a capital component of it of more than 30 billion for 2020. And there ought to have been a mechanism where tenders are collected for contractors that are engaged in executing your capital component of the budget. There is nothing in this report that suggests a kobo has been collected by way of tender fees. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Most of the projects are ongoing projects, so there couldn't have been any charges for tender fees. And in any case, whenever they have reason to award contract, there is what we call Federal Judiciary Tenders Board, which is domiciled at NJC. So that aspect of revenue would only be reflected in NJC's performance, not Supreme Court.
That's all we would take for suggestions, questions on the 2020 performance on 2021 projections of the Supreme Court. But you have heard us, and we are clear. Our position is that what has been given to the Supreme Court, we totally frown at the reduction of what was appropriated for the Supreme Court in 2020, especially against the background of the fact that 8 new justices of the Supreme Court have been appointed. So there is need for upward review, if not on the provision of 2020 appropriation, but specifically, we frown at the provisions of the sum of, I think, less than 10 billion.
Yes,
10 billion. That's 2 billion less than what was given in 2020 appropriation. So we are going to look into that. And I believe that one thing that we need, it's something that we need to establish here. I know that the NJC sits, and we appreciate you by give our regards to the chairman of NJC and by extension my Lord, the Chief Justice of Nigeria. And we've been working together with the judiciary, and we'll continue to work together with the judiciary. But just like the court sits to determine cases for litigants, and then the positions of the court are respected in the land, our responsibility here in the committee and in the House of, in the National Assembly is that of the purse, the power of appropriation. So we would plead that when we make some, because we are going to make our own proposition and rejig to allocate sums to areas that we see that are critical, we want to appeal to NJC not to see as we are encroaching. We are exercising our powers of legislation and budgeting, because we are going to do the rejigging in the budget. Because we won't sit down to see a reduction in the allocation to Supreme Court when we have had new justices appointed. So NJC should not see as if we are encroaching on the position. It is our legislative, it is our constitutional right and our constitutional powers, and we are going to exercise that to make in consonance with the Senate.
The Honorable Secretary of the National Judicial Council has already highlighted some of the problems with the Court of Appeal. With your kind permission, sir, I will proceed in brief to say our major challenges. The document before you, you are aware of what was approved for the Court of Appeal in the current fiscal year and what we expect in 2021. If you compare the two, there's a shortfall of about 4%. Then the area we have in major challenges is overhead costs, where we have 43% deduction. And this concerns the DTA, healthcare of the justice of the Court of Appeal, their transport, their hotel accommodation, their air tickets. From what we have as at present, we cannot meet the demand up to July based on what we have in this 2021 budget of 2.8 billion. Last year, the court had 5 something billion. But as at present, Honorable Chairman and distinguished members, some of the overheads on this overhead of 2020, they are in red. Some of them are in red. Then what more of why you have 2.8 billion for the whole year? So far as regards 2020 implementation of the budget, from January to October, the court had a release of 80 to 83% of the recurrent was released, while 50-60% of the capital has so far been released. We hope it will be completed by the end of the year. The area still with a kind of permission, I have to repeat myself. The major challenge of the court is these new justices coming, their vehicles, their accommodation. As I'm talking to you now, I'm recently appointed, but I came to know that some of the justices' quarters is not habitable in some of the divisions. The court had to take out rent, and it is from this overhead cost. They had to take run on this overhead. So I know of two houses of justice just recently. The application for the payment of rent was brought to my table. Rent was brought to my table because I was opportune to go to their house. You cannot imagine somebody who might be living in that house, talk less of a justice of the Court of Appeal. So we had to ask them, we had to make arrangement to get rent for them. So if this overhead, Your Honor, is not increased, we're really going to find a lot of challenges in 2021. I urge you to consider a document before you which you presented, and I just say for the court. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. And before I give opportunity for my colleagues to speak, I would adopt my position as concerns the Supreme Court in this case too. because if we, at every rung of the judicial ladder, we need to ensure the welfare for the judicial officers and the staff. Judicial officers of concern. My concern, because it had happened to a justice of the Court of Appeal, is the issue of the security of judicial officers. And I have been loud in my advocacy for additional extra security for judicial officers. A situation, I keep saying it, even at the risk of sounding like a broken record, repetitively, I will continue to say it. A situation where you have a judge, a justice of the Court of Appeal in the same car, and in front of that car, it's only a police officer with a revolver in front of that car, inside the same staff car. It does not go well for the security and the well-being of our judicial officers. Why are we saying this? We had a case of a justice of the Court of Appeal whose attempt was made at her and she was kidnapped. And then we had a case, I think, if not mistaken, we had a fatal case concerning the orderly who was in the same vehicle with that justice. So it's our advocacy, and that's why we need additional funding. We are not indicting anybody. If people in other arms of government, because it's clearly so, if people in other arms of government have the privilege, whether it's a minister, whether it's a man in the legislature, a member of the House of Assembly, or a member of the National Assembly, or a board or a DG of a commission has the privilege of being accompanied by an extra vehicle, a Hilux van, with 2 or 3 long-armed security personnel. Why can't we afford this for our judicial officers? So we should begin to look at that. We should begin to look at that and see how, and it is sum total of these concerns that we draw the conclusion. It's upon this premise that we draw the conclusion that we need extra budgetary allocation for the judiciary so that it can trickle down to the different courts to solve these challenges that we see. Then the chairman of this committee has an appeal. And that appeal is not a selfish appeal. It's born out of the fact that we need to get justice close to our people, wheresoever they are. You find out that the bulk of the cases in the Court of Appeal, Calabar, comes from the state I come from, Akwa Ibom State. And we are all aware of the challenges of the commuters on the Calabar-Itu highway. So I believe that we've seen your provisions for, payment for other courts that you had established, and you are planning to establish some other division. We've seen your provision for ongoing projects like the one in Yola, Ilorin, Lagos, Sokoto, Benin, Kaduna. And we appreciate the effort of the immediate past PCA and the entire judiciary in establishing new courts like the one we had in Oka, Anambra State. I think the one we had in Delta State, Asaba. So we will be appealing. And we know how magnanimous His Lordship, the Honorable Justice Monica Densem, the PCA, is with trying to make sure that litigants have easy access to justice. So we'll be appealing that as you are considering other divisions of the Court of Appeal to take justice close to the people, that a Court of Appeal, a division of the Court of Appeal in Uyo, will not be out of place. And if that is a gift that you will give this committee and the chairman of this committee for the cooperation that the chairman has cooperated with the judiciary, I think it's not too difficult a thing to ask. It's not a personal thing. I'm not asking for the contract of the court. I'm asking for the establishment of that court, and which will save the cause of justice. So I believe that you are going to take that into consideration in what you are going to be doing.
We urge the judiciary, probably this time we're talking about the Court of Appeal, to do as you have said. But I want to, Mr. Chairman, maybe it is an in-house thing. We can move as a committee and talk to the state governments to assist the courts. I mean, Akwa Ibom State is a very rich state, and I'm sure they would like to do as River State is doing. It's also to do some transparency, even within the court system. I've always made this point that there are a few states that support, it's just like my colleague over there was talking about remittances, monies that were supposed to be gotten from applications. You know, when people who come for contract, they pay little money. I want to believe that that point he's making is not totally forgotten, that money ought to go to the national purse. That is contract. When contractors come and make applications, that the monies gotten from those applications, there is some technical name you call it, that it goes in. The same way, when a state government, we need to deal with these issues from a transparency perspective, that if a state government assists a court, be it the Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal in each station, there should be an entry reflecting the amount of money, what benefit you. It's like an entry, money coming to you. Now, when you look at the budget yearly, year in, year out, there is no return. And I think that is not right for the courts. The Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal, none. They don't have that. And I believe that even in Abuja, the federal courts outside the FCT courts, the federal courts, including the Supreme Court, you get some benefit from the FCT. Those should be reflected. They cannot just go unnoticed. I have come here a few times to say, acknowledge what you have received from a state like River State. And it is only there and then that you have such acknowledgement. Now, if those acknowledgements are made, okay, I believe that certain states, I have already said that I second my chairman's motion, I second it and support it fully. But if there is an acknowledgement, without even my chairman knowing, the people at home in Akwa Ibom will do certain things for the courts there, for the federal courts there, because they know that those things would be acknowledged. And that is the point I want to make. And it has always been important to me, Mr. Chairman, that when a state spends money, okay, the court system should acknowledge it. You know, the police gets, and indeed the army and the SS, they get a lot of money from the states, and they are not acknowledged, and I don't think it's right for our budgetary system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In recent time, especially during the COVID-19 period, Chair, you will agree with me that even when COVID-19 was at the height of its destruction, everywhere was locked down, but still, to some extent, crime is moving on at one point or the other, meaning that we still need the courts even when the country is locked down. And there are attempts by some courts, a deliberate attempt to come up with virtual court sessions. But I think that one wasn't too successful. And looking at, even after the COVID-19, I don't think the court session has resumed completely as was expected. And Chair, in all their presentations, I have not seen any one of the, either the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, or even on the other papers I just peeped through, any one of them that come up with a presentation on how to improve either this virtual court session or any other way to decongest our prisons and to increase the effectiveness in administering justice on the citizens. Because one of the major things in the course we have now, the challenges we have, maybe due to manpower, due to other challenges, is the prolonged process of administering justice.
On page 1 of the paper, I tried to bring out the number of judges and the staff of the court, and then the breakdown of the 2020 appropriation, which stands at 15,488,147,004 naira. Then the expenditure so far on 2020 appropriation, capital release from January to August is on the paper. Then the expenditure is on the paper, which stands at 45. This is because we have money with us, but the contractors cannot source it. They have not yet worked up to the level of being issued a certificate by the consultants, particularly the 20-court building in Lagos, which is at the stage of completion, and then the extension of 6-story building at the back of the headquarters. We are awaiting the certificates, and it's a huge amount of money, which NJC have to clear them with the certificate before we pay them. That is why the percentage is a little bit low. And we have not also bought vehicles for the year. We are in the process of buying. That is also another huge amount of money, which we warehouse from January to date, so that we can make once and for all purchase of vehicles for the year. And that stands for 65% in respect of the recurrent. And I also try to bring out the present, 2021 budget and the difference. 2020 was 15 billion, and then 2021 is 12. There's a difference of 2.9 billion between 2020 budget and what we are going to use for 2021. So 2020 is more with 2.9 billion. And just like what the acting CR, Federal Court of Appeal, said, there's a huge challenge in the area of salary for the judges. We are expecting 21 judges from now. In 2020, we were able to cater for 6. We are at the verge of buying their salary. Their vehicles. We have made salaries available even in 2020. But the problem is going to be 2021, where we are expecting 16 to join us. The salary has been provided, but I don't think the court will be able to buy 16 vehicles for the incoming judges. And in the area of overheads, that is the personnel, we can see there is a reduction of 44.69% from 2020 to 2021. And just like both the Secretary and the Court of Appeal raised the issue, this will greatly affect the running of the court, because court is a recurrent, it operates under recurrent mode. And if we have this reduction of 44.69% from last year, from this year, come 2021, I don't know whether we can go beyond June. Because out of 100, 44 is being taken. So the highest one can go is probably June, July, in respect of the recurrence. And my concern is to do with areas like accommodation. There are places we still have to rent accommodation. And we need not less than 140 million to pay for the rent of various quarters that we are renting in where we are yet to build our houses. And since we are operating in 39